Hello everyone, welcome to Options with Doug, streaming live on Monday and Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, a Bookmap Discord and the Bookmap YouTube channel. Before I get started, I need to go through the disclosures. General disclosure, all Bookmap limited materials, information, and presentations are for educational purposes only and should not be considered specific investment advice nor recommendations. Risk disclosure, trading futures, equities, and options involves substantial risk of loss. It is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Here's my contact information. The best way to get in touch with me is through Discord. My name on Discord is Doug P. Also in Bookmap Discord, there's an Options-Doug chat channel. You can post questions, comments, and content related to the topics in my presentation and the topic to the channel that I'll go through in just a moment. I'm also on X. My name there is @DougPless. For those of you who've seen my webinars before, please bear with me. If there's anyone new here, I want to make sure they understand my approach to trading. So here are the key tenets. Here's my approach of trading. I believe that options trades and market maker hedging activity are key drivers of price in many stocks and futures. That certainly applies to large cap tech stocks like the Magnificent Seven stocks, as well as the equity index futures like the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100. And for the S&P 500, SPX is the underlying index, SPY is the ETF version of that index, and the S futures contract is a derivative of SPX. And when traders buy and sell puts and calls in SPX and SPY, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with the S futures. And for the NASDAQ 100, NDX is the underlying index, QQQ is the much more liquid ETF version index, and the NQ futures contract is a derivative of NDX. And just like the S&P 500, when traders buy and sell puts and calls in NDX and QQQ, market makers take the opposite side of the trades and they hedge their delta exposure with NQ futures. The focus of my presentation today and the focus of the Options-Doug chat channel is options order flow, the impact of options markets on stocks and futures, and the influence of market maker hedging flow on price action. I have a two-step process for trading. The first is planning. And I use positional analysis. I look at how traders and market makers are positioned in the options market and how those positions change from day to day to develop a thesis regarding expected trading range and volatility for the day as well as the directional bias. And the second step in my process is execution. I look at real-time order flow in Bookmap and real-time market maker hedging flow in Spotgamma Hero to confirm my thesis. And for setups, and when I talk about setups today, I will be focusing on an underlying asset. Setups in that asset can be taken with futures contracts, shares of stock, or options, depending on the asset as well as the way you like to trade. Questions and comments are welcome, and I will be watching both the Options-Doug chat channel as well as the chat on YouTube for your questions and comments. Please feel free to post. I'll do my best to answer your questions. And hello, Iron Man Tiger. Welcome. Glad you're here. Here's my agenda for today, Wednesday, January 28th. First of all, I want to go over news items, economic data, events, and earnings for today as well as the rest of the week. Then I'll go over my positional analysis. Then I'll review some setups from earlier today. Then I'll take a look at the live market. And when I get to the live market, time permitting, if anyone has any stocks they want me to take a look at, please let me know. I'll be glad to do that. Of course, today is FOMC day. So let's start there. And the meeting concludes at 2 p.m. today with the announcement and statement. And then the press conference begins at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. All right, so this is the CME FedWatch tool. The current Fed funds rate, current target rate, 350 to 375 basis points. And right now there is almost 100% chance that there will be no cut, that the target rate will remain unchanged. So then, of course, the Market will be concerned about any changes in language in the announcement, and then of course the press conference. Hold on just a second. All right, sorry about that. All right, so I will focus on the FOMC at 2 p.m. So I'll stop whatever I'm doing and focus on the FOMC. All right, so after that, Mag 7 stock earnings begin or continue today with Meta, Microsoft, Tesla reporting after the market closes. And then tomorrow, Apple, SanDisk, and Western Digital all report. And then on Friday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, PPI data comes out. All right, so big event of the week is the FOMC and then also Mag 7 earnings with Meta, Microsoft, Tesla again after the market closes today, and Apple tomorrow. All right, so that is the news. Let's move on now to positional analysis. I'm going to start with the S&P 500. This is the ES futures, the Bookmap, and this is starting from yesterday afternoon with the market open at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. ES rallied up and above the ES upper weekly expected move, found resistance right around SPY 699, and then has been trading lower ever since then, making a series of lower highs. Now it looks like ES is consolidating up and down around the SPY 695 large gamma 4 level. So a key SPX level here is the 7,000 absolute gamma strike. So SPX did trade up above 7,000, finally reached 7,000 in the overnight trading. And then reverse lower. And that was a good entry point for a short. Right around 10 a.m. All right, let's zoom in on that. All right, so before I spend more time on this chart, I want to step back, take a look at a higher time frame. And I'm going to go to SPX underlying index. This is a 1 year, 1 day chart for SPX. The rally began last April, and SPX continues to make a series of higher highs as traders buy every pullback. All right, let's take a look at a shorter time frame. Let's go to a 30-day, 1 hour chart. Very steep rally that began after this trend break last Tuesday. Support right around 6,800. Very steep rally up to 7,000. Then that looks like this trend line has been broken. So SPX did gap up above this level that it acted as resistance. And now trading down below that level. All right, let's take a look at the levels on this chart. I'm going to start with the expected moves. Dashed purple line showing the lower and upper weekly expected move. And remember, ES in the pre-market hours did find resistance or did trade up above its upper weekly expected move. And of course, SPX in the regular trading hours did not test that level so far today. All right, so that's the upper and lower weekly expected move based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from last Friday. Those levels remain in place for the entire week. Then the dashed blue lines are showing the lower and upper daily expected move, also based on the options market. That's based on the closing price for SPX from yesterday. SPX trading right in the middle of that, and that was a relatively low expected move, plus or minus 36.6 points for an FOMC day. And I do post the expected moves every day the day before for SPX, ES, and NQ in the Options-Jug chat channel. All right, let's take a look at the spot gamma levels on this chart. These are based on gamma-weighted open interest. They're provided to Spotgamma subscribers on a variety of trading platforms. Again, this is Thinkorswim, a 30-day 1-hour chart. I'm going to point out the key daily levels. First of all, the put wall is at 6,800. That's a strike with large net negative gamma. It can be expected to act as support. And note the put wall did move down 100 points from 6,900 yesterday to 6,800 today. All right, next level up is the volatility trigger. And that is at 69.40. It looks like the label is obscured, but it's right here at 69.40. So that is Spotgamma's proprietary volatility and gamma flip level. Below that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is negative. In a negative gamma environment, market makers have to trade with price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to enhance or increase volatility. Above that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is positive. In a positive gamma environment, market makers have to trade against price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to subdue or decrease volatility. And note that is based on Spotgamma's older total open interest model. We'll take a look at a view of gamma based on their newer synthetic open interest model that is updated more frequently during the day. Next level up is the absolute gamma strike at 7,000. That's a strike with largest absolute positive and negative gamma. So that's where most of the gamma-weighted open interest is concentrated. And that was a key level before the cash opened today. And could be a key level again if the market is happy with the announcement and what Jerome Powell has to say today. Then finally, the call wall has now moved up to 7,050. The call wall is a strike with largest net positive gamma. It can be expected to act as resistance. So if SPX makes it through the 7,000 level, that would be the next level of resistance up above. All right, let's wrap up our view of SPX with a 1-minute chart. So this shows the sharp rally that ended up finding resistance at 7,000. Kind of a little triple top there, and then steady trend down until about 11:30 or so, and then consolidation. All right, so 7,000 in the top of the range of the spot gamma levels. There are a couple of levels up above, and the key level up above is the 7,050 call wall, and then plenty of levels down below. Let's take a quick look at SPY. Then we'll get to Bookmap. So there's SPY, resistance at 699 that I mentioned earlier today. That was, looks like right around 1 a.m., if that bar is correct. If not, a little bit after. And then SPY making a very nice steady series of lower highs until finding support right around 694.5 between the 0 gamma level and the volatility trigger. All right, back to Bookmap. So in Bookmap, I have the key levels for SPX, SPY, and ES on this chart. So there's the SPX 7,000 level, the absolute gamma strike. Very nice entry point for a short this morning. We'll talk about that in just a couple minutes. And by the way, there is a difference in price between ES and SPX. Today it is somewhere between 28 and 29, a little bit closer to 29. So I'm just using 29. So I'm showing SPX 7,000 at ES 7,029. And I do post the index relationships that I use every day in the Options-Doug chat channel. All right, let's take a look. So shifts in levels again for SPX. Put wall shifted lower, call wall shifted higher. And then for SPY, both the volatility trigger and absolute gamma strike shifted higher. Looks like I have the wrong label here. That should be the absolute gamma strike and volatility trigger. Let me fix that so that's not confusing. Go to my spreadsheet. All right, that'll update in a minute or less. All right, so 695, also a key level. So 7,000 absolute gamma strike down to around the 695 SPY absolute gamma strike. All right, let's take a look at NASDAQ. NASDAQ, similar price action. So NASDAQ, let me point out a key level. So this dashed purple line, you can't see the label there. That's the upper weekly expected move. NASDAQ could trade up above the upper weekly expected move in overnight hours, above the upper daily expected move. You can't see that label either, but that's the dashed blue line. Found resistance right at NQ 26,350. Then back down to around the area breaking out, back down to the upper weekly expected move, chopping around that level. All right, so that's NASDAQ. And let's take a look at the underlying index charts. I'm going to start with QQQ. All right, QQQ. Note there are no spot gamma levels for QQQ in play. And 630 on the downside. That's a large gamma 2, 0 gamma level. And then the highest spot gamma level for QQQ is the 640 call wall. So a big gap, a big zone between 630 and 640 of no spot gamma levels. Let's take a look at NDX. This level right here, this combo 2 level at 26,095, that's the next to highest spot gamma level. Now it looks like NDX is chopping up and down around these levels here. That's the 26,000 absolute gamma strike, and then a combo level just above that. And then making a series of slightly higher lows after consolidating around that level. All right, so that's NDX. All right, so there's that 26,000 level that I mentioned. And it is just a little bit lower than the upper weekly expected move. And Ironman Tiger thinks, Ironman Tiger says, on ES seems like a divergence on CVD, but iceberg is clear. Yeah, so we'll take a look at setups in just a minute. I'm working on my positional analysis now. All right, so let's take a quick look at gamma to give us an expectation for volatility. Then we'll talk about setups and then get ready for, I've got 9 minutes until the FOMC. So let's wrap this up. This is the trace gamma heat map. This is showing market makers' gamma position. Blue shading indicates positive gamma. Remember, in positive gamma, we're looking for lower volatility. Red shading indicates negative gamma. In negative gamma, we're looking for higher volatility. Let's step back in time. Let's go back to about 10 minutes after the cash open. This is updated every 10 minutes. Again, this is market maker's gamma position for SPX. Looking at the GEX bars over on the left, we can see this 99 percentile strike at 69.50. So if SPX does move lower, that would be the primary target. And then also SPX at 7,000. And of course, SPX was trading up closer to 7,000 after the open, then moved down. All right, so that gamma that was at 7,000 has really diminished as price moves lower. Remember, gamma is greatest at the money at expiration, and that's almost all 0 DTE gamma. All right, so SPX trading right in the middle of that range of 69.50 to 7,000, and mildly positive gamma below and a little bit of negative gamma up above. And it looks like the hero signal is ticking higher right now. All right, so let's take a look at that. Let's see what options traders have been doing. I'm going to start with the S&P 500. This is the S&P 500 index signal. So we're now moving on now to execution. So we've looked at static levels on Bookmap that are updated once a day, then gamma that's updated every 10 minutes. Now we're moving on to real-time execution, looking at options trades. So this is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity in real time for the S&P 500 index components. That we've already taken a look at a couple of those. That is SPX and SPY, and also includes ES futures and XSP. The white line is price for SPX, and the purple line is the hero signal. The direction of the line indicates options delta. A falling hero signal indicates traders are taking negative delta options positions. They're buying puts and or selling calls. Then a rising hero signal indicates positive delta options delta. They are buying calls and or selling puts. All right, so let's zoom in on this. So we know there was a good short this morning from 7,000. Three tests of the 7,000 absolute gamma strike. Then the last one was the one somewhere between 9:55 and 10 a.m. was the one to take. And that led to a nice short. So let's go take a look at Bookmap now. So in Bookmap, let's zoom in on this. So there's the three tests of the 7,000 level. Note large traders were fading that move with iceberg orders. That's shown by the light blue line in the subchart. Let me get this out of the way. That's the scale. So large traders fading that move right at the cash open, selling this move up. Large green volume dots, aggressive buyers. And large traders again fading that move with iceberg orders. And then as price started to move lower, sell stop orders shown by the yellow line helped to fuel that move. And as Iron Man Tiger points out, there was a divergence in CVD. But when you put it all together, you look at hero, stop orders, and iceberg signals, it was a pretty clear short. And then CVD did start to roll over just before 10. And you could see the magenta volume dots coming in as price broke below the 7,000 level, and VWAP, shown by that light blue line there. All right, so that's the short and the S&P 500. And Alex, welcome, glad you're here. Alex says, thanks for streaming. You're very welcome. And thanks for watching. And thanks for posting. All right, so that's the S&P 500. And I've got about 3.5 minutes. Let's take a look at NASDAQ. So the NASDAQ setup was at the upper daily expected move, which was 26,299, just below this NQ 26,300 level. Entry point for a short. Again, large traders fading that move with iceberg orders. Then they started buying weakness. And then, unlike the S&P 500, cumulative volume delta has been falling, shown by the dark blue to magenta line. Also, yellow line again showing sell stop orders fueling the move lower. Now it looks like large traders are starting to fade the move again. All right, so let's take a quick look at Hero for NASDAQ. And not quite as noisy as the S&P 500 index signal, and definitely trending down, setting up that short at the NQ upper daily expected move. All right, let's get ready for FOMC. And give me just a moment. I'm going to turn on a stream of CNBC. It'll be delayed, but I'll see what the FOMC has to say. All right, so I'm going to focus on primarily the S&P 500 to begin. So I'm going to open up two hero signals here. I'm going to go to full screen, and I'm going to look at the S&P 500 equity signal. All right, so just looking quickly this morning, traders were initially buying calls in the S&P 500 equities, and then they reversed lower right around 10, just after the S&P 500 reversed lower. All right, so let's zoom over. Whoops. So I want to keep the zoom level for both the S&P 500 equities and the index signal. So I'll have these two tabs open. All right, so traders started taking positive delta positions in the S&P 500 index signal, index components right around 1235. That still continues. And they flattened out pretty much on the equities. All right, so back to Bookmap. Back to ES. All right, I've got about 10 seconds. Zoom in more. All right, so the announcement's out. It'll take me Since I'm watching the CNBC stream, it'll maybe take a minute to get the information. So not much movement so far. All right, so now it looks like the initial move is higher. And the algos have parsed the statement now. All right, so of course, as expected, the Fed funds rate is unchanged. No changes. As expected, 99% chance, no changes. So now, again, the algo's parsing the statement. Once they've done that, then then most traders will probably wait for the press conference. All right, so a reversal right around that combo level for SPY combo level, back down to the 695 level. Let's see what options traders are doing, see how they're reacting. Go to the S&P 500 index signal, zoom in a little bit more. Not much change so far. Well, it looks like this is out of date. Hero not keeping up. All right, sorry about this. This is definitely delayed. Looks like maybe even stopped. All right, back to Bookmap. Let's check the equity signal. Also stopped. Yeah, that's disappointing. All right, back to Bookmap. Now moving lower. Broke down below the 695 level. Let's get a perspective for the day. So making new lows for the day. So downtrend from 7,000 down to around the SPY 695 absolute gamma strike volatility trigger. Then consolidation for a couple of hours before FOMC announcement. And then now trading down to 694. And new lows for the day. Let's check NASDAQ. And NASDAQ still not at lows for the day, which is right around 26,100. So NASDAQ traded down 200 points from right around 950 to just before noon. All right, back to ES. Let's see now, reversing higher. Alex, thanks. Alex says your playbook videos on Spotgamma channel are sophisticated and very demonstrative, Thanks a lot. You're welcome. Combining Spotgamma levels plus Hero plus Bookmap plus MBO are the best toolbox for intraday and scalping. Yeah, I agree, and thank you very much for pointing that out. Thanks again. All right, so potentially ES making a series of lower highs. We'll see. Magenta volume dots indicating some sellers are coming in. Resistance at the 695 level. Cumulative volume delta falling. Large traders did fade this move with iceberg orders, or did sell along. A few buyers came in. Let's see if Hero is caught up. No, Hero is still stuck. Check Trace. Looks like Trace is also stuck. All right, Fed pauses after 3 consecutive cuts. And again, no change to the Fed funds rate. 2 dissents from Moran and Waller, both favoring a quarter-point cut. Economy expanded at a solid pace. Job gains have remained low. Unemployment has shown some signs of stabilization. This is all from the statement. Fed removed language saying downside risks to employment have risen. All right, now ES trying to break out above the 695 level. Remove language saying there's been a shift in the balance of risk. All right, so far the range of trade and elevation remains somewhat elevated. So pretty narrow range in ES so far today, about 15 points after 2 p.m., after the announcement. All right, I'm going to check on Hero again. All right, so now it looks like Hero is updated. This is the index signal rising. It is updating. So this is very, very small. Delta notional, 20 million. That looks like a minor stock. Yesterday, I think this was in the 8 billion range, delta notional for the S&P 500 index. All right, rising a little bit. All right, the teal line is showing 0 DTE. So up until about 1 p.m., right here, most trade was 0 DTE, shown by the teal line. And now the lines have separated just a little bit. So the hero signal for the S&P 500 index is ticking up. Flat for the equities. I'm going to open up one more instance of hero. Open full screen. Let's take a quick look at NASDAQ. All right, NASDAQ signal ticking up. Mag 7 flat. All right, I do want to take a look. Let's go back to Bookmap. So we'll go back to the, whoops, I meant to keep that on the, so we've got index, equities, and then Mag 7. Let's go back to Bookmap. All right, so still back right at the 695 level, chopping up and down around that level. I do want to take a look at a couple of stocks. So there were some very strong stocks this morning, and the memory and storage stocks, of course. So first stock I want to take a look at is Seagate. Seagate reported earnings. I think that was after the close yesterday. Very strong rally today. Huge bullish opening drive. Sorry about that. From 390 all the way up to 450. Straight up, 390, 435, a little bit of consolidation. Then up to the liquidity at 450, absorption at that level. So those limit sell orders in the order book were never consumed. So let's take a look at Hero and see what options traders are doing in Seagate. Bullish opening drive. Let's shift to puts and calls. Traders were buying calls. Market makers sell the calls. They have to buy stock to hedge their delta exposure. So that first burst higher was about 15 minutes. Seagate broke well above its 400 call wall and then slowed down a bit as the call buyers slowed down, and now is consolidated as the call buyers have taken the foot off the gas. So classic pattern, very strong bullish opening drive, slowing down, then call exhaustion, call buyers take the foot off the gas, and price consolidates. So that's Seagate, huge move higher. And anyone who owned calls or owned stock had a very nice day today. So that's Seagate. Let's go back and check the index, S&P 500. Hero signal continues to move higher. Equities slightly higher. Looks like the SPX is turning down lower. Let's go back to Bookmap. Go back to ES. No, still just chopping up and down around the 695 level. And ES has been around that level since about 1145. No point of control shown by this purple line here has dropped down to just above the 695 level. And you can see in the session volume profile here, most of the volume concentrated around that level. All right, back to Hero. Do have a couple of other stocks I want to check in on. First of all, Western Digital. And I believe Western Digital reports earnings. Oops, let's go back to S&P 500. Let's go over here, puts and calls. Western Digital. Bullish opening drive, call peak reversal. Then the call buyers came back in as the stock buyers came in. And now call buyers, exhaustion, price consolidates. So Western Digital up in sympathy with Seagate. I think Western Digital reports earnings after the close today. So let's check Bookmap. Oh, I don't have Western Digital in Bookmap. Another stock, Micron, memory stock, high bandwidth memory. Also very strong today. Just like yesterday. Pretty choppy price action, not nearly as clean as Seagate. Right back to ES. Still stuck within that 15-point range. Here's Western Digital. Bullish opening drive, call peak reversal, and then rally back to right around the highs of the day. Micron. Bullish opening drive, then call exhaustion, consolidation. All right, anyone have any questions? Anyone have any stocks they want to take a look at? Let's check gold and silver. I don't have either in Bookmap now. Pretty choppy price action in gold, but slightly higher, trading above, just above the 485 call wall, key gamma strike. And net for the day, traders have been selling puts and buying calls, shown by the positive delta notional on both lines. Orange line is calls, blue line shows puts. Let's check silver. Silver trading up above the 100 key gamma strike. Looks like more consolidation today. And Alex says, I've noticed that using gamma levels give you good risk-reward ratio in the first 3 to 4 session hours. Do you have your timing patterns rules? Yes, so I agree. The first, really, I like to trade from the open until about noon. And those, in my opinion, those are the best trading hours. And you can see right here, let's go back to Seagate. And Seagate, you could say the best trade was in the first 15 minutes. Here's another stock, CoreWeave, that was very strong yesterday at the top of the list and very weak today. Bearish momentum all the way down. Traders selling calls, buying puts. CoreWeave broke below the 110 key gamma strike. I do have CoreWeave and Bookmap. Again, very strong yesterday, weak stock today. All right, let's take a look at the Mag 7 stocks that report earnings. After the close today, first Meta. All right, Meta, slightly bearish day. Let's see what options traders are doing, how they're positioning themselves ahead of earnings. And net for the day, they are taking positive delta options positions, buying calls and selling puts, shown by the positive delta notional on both those lines. And most of that was from the open. Traders buying calls, call peak, a little bit of a slow reversal. All right, so that's Meta. Let's take a look at Microsoft. And this is interesting. This is some algo selling calls. Very steady line down. So some algo, some institution, just steadily selling calls since about 950. And I've seen something like that in NDX before with an ETF fund rollover, but nothing quite like this in a stock. So let's check Bookmap. See how Microsoft is responding to that algo selling calls. Was moving lower in the morning. But you can see the green volume dots and rising cumulative volume delta. Traders have been buying stock. Microsoft trying to recover. All right, next stock, Tesla. Choppy day in Tesla. Let's see what options traders are doing. Then we'll get back and check the S&P 500. Tesla, a little bit of a bullish opening drive up until about 10 a.m. Peak reversal flow alert comes in right at the peak there, signaling a potential reversal in hedging flow from positive delta to negative delta. That's exactly what happened. Tesla reversed lower, broke down below the 435 hedge wall, and is now trading just below that level. So bullish opening drive, then a peak reversal right at 10 a.m. Let's go back to Bookmap. There's that bullish opening drive for the first half hour, then the peak reversal. Now consolidation. All right, back to ES. Still right at 695. So traders definitely waiting on the press conference. Let's go back to Hero. Go back to the S&P 500 index. Still moving higher, but a very small number, 258 million. Let's check Trace. Negative gamma now. So the landscape has shifted from positive gamma this morning to negative gamma today. So looking for more price movement in this red shading, negative gamma. So setting up for potential for higher volatility as the press conference begins in about 5 minutes, with some positive gamma up above around 7,050, the call wall, up around here. And then this positive gamma at 69.50 remains. Alex asked about TLT. Hold on just a second. All right, so this is the volatility setup for the press conference that begins in about 4 minutes. Alex wants to take a look at TLT. Yeah, I don't have that in Bookmap. We can take a look in Hero here. So moving slightly lower. So TLT moving slightly lower. All right, let's go back to the S&P 500 index, still moving higher. Back to Bookmap. Still not much of a change. NES. Let's check NASDAQ. NASDAQ trading slightly above the, so trading above the 26,000 level that has acted as support a couple times, trading up above the upper weekly expected move. Let's go back to Hero. All right, Hero, the index signal continues to move higher. Equity signal also moving higher. All right, back to Bookmap. Still right at the 695 level. All right, last call for questions, comments. Alpha Stream, welcome. Glad you're here. Alpha Stream asked about GLD. Yeah, we'll take a look again. I've already taken a look at GLD. We'll take a look again. Go over here. Take a look at gold. Looks like pretty choppy price action. Gold trading above its 485 call wall. Key gamma strike. And net for the day, traders have been selling puts and buying calls. Selling puts makes sense, and I think increased implied volatility for GLD. So it looks like GLD trading slightly higher from the cash open. All right, everyone, the press conference is about to begin. Let's take one last look. All right, so it looks like now ES has dropped down to 694. I'll wait about a minute. All right, so ES again finding support at the SPY 694.0 gamma level. All right, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I want to thank you very much for watching. SPQ Raw, welcome, glad you're here. Said enjoyed your coverage. Newbie listener, thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks for your comment. All right, everyone, now sharp reversal at the 694 level. Press conference beginning. Everyone have a great afternoon. Good luck trading. And I will see you next Monday. Thanks for watching. Bye.